All right, and we are live. Hello and welcome to the Business Octopus live stream, where we talk about all things sales, marketing, and technology. Today, I'm joined by Mark Nicholls. Welcome. How are you going?
G'day, I'm well. How are you, Avon?
I'm fantastic. So Mark has got a background in cybersecurity, and we're going to talk about basically all the things that people are doing wrong in their business when it comes to cybersecurity, and what can we do better. So I guess it's a pretty crazy time at the moment dealing with all of the stuff. I mean, I get phishing emails every day, but now with the rise of AI, it's getting 10 times worse. Just a quick random question out of the blue. What's your take on it?
Yeah, look, I think there's no doubt about that. It's getting worse. You hear more and more reports from various people, whether that's lay people in the street or professionals or business people. Yeah, there's a lot more going on, a lot more talk about what's going on, which in itself is not a bad thing. And look, Avon, my background probably isn't massively cyber. I mean, it is cybersecurity, but more transformation and digital transformation and strategy development, digital strategy delivery. And of course, that includes cybersecurity, because you can't do any of that stuff without having a cybersecurity perspective to what strategy looks like and what delivery of innovations look like.
Well, I'm a big believer in good foundations. So having the right stuff behind it. I think a lot of times, like IT is so many layers and it's a really complex environment. So I think sometimes for people to understand cybersecurity, they first got to understand what the hell they're doing on the platform anyway. So
Yeah.
what do people get wrong about cybersecurity?
Yeah, I got to come at this much from a business sort of perspective, and you'll see a lot of my answers sort of come at it from that perspective. The first thing that I see is people being complacent, maybe ignoring it, maybe putting it in the too hard basket, maybe don't have access to the expertise. So yeah, they kick that problem down the road. That would be one area. The other would be really misaligning priorities. So it's true. I think most people would recognize that you can't do everything. There's always more that can be done. So how do you decide what it is you're going to get done and what it is that you're going to delay? And that can be somewhat of an intellectual exercise, but ultimately you want to be aligning that with the business interests and the business risk, and helping the business actually prioritize what's of most importance. And there's two good reasons for that. One is ultimately cyber is a business risk. You can have something technically go wrong, but unless it impacts the business, then really who cares? And number one, that's business interests are the reason we're doing most of these things, whether that's business, corporate, whether that's government, whoever it is. Secondly, by aligning it with the business, you have friends that you're aligning to, you have stakeholders that you're aligning to. It means that if something does happen and you've chosen not to do something, because after all, you can't do everything, then it becomes a joint whole of organization decision, a joint decision with your business peers, rather than I'm a CISO, I'm a cyber professional, I'm an IT professional sitting in a corner making these choices on my own. That's not the place to be in, because then when you're making those choices, there's one person can get blamed, and you haven't consulted. So yeah, that's a misalignment of priorities. Either misalignment because it hasn't been oriented with the business, or the business doesn't think it has because they haven't been engaged properly.
Well, we mentioned a little bit about sort of foundations, and I think, like I'm always a big fan of like going back to basics and like what the original thought, I guess, that drives all of this. And with cybersecurity being so complex, you've pretty much outlined at the start there the Eisenhower matrix: do, delay, drop, delegate.
Yeah.
So can it really be that simple?
Well, you've got to try and make it as simple as possible in some ways. But there's only so many risks that a business faces, right? Like breaks down to maybe 4 or 5, and if you can think about all these various things that you might have on your priority list, link them back to these 4 or 5, or for most organizations, it's going to be less than that. Then you start to bring about some simplicity and some way of defining some focus. So the big risks for most businesses are going to fall into a couple of main categories. A business interruption of some kind, so an inability to trade. So you can't earn revenue, you can't pay suppliers, you can't pay staff. So your organization stops working. So that's one of the major ones. That is a risk that most businesses are exposed to. So that will apply to everyone. Quite easy to quantify, right, as well. And so you can start quantifying that, and you can start putting investment profiles against preventing that. The other one is a loss of data, either data that the business owns or data that they're holding on behalf of others, which could be customers, could be staff or partners. And then the impact on them as a result of loss of data would be maybe some reputational impact, could be some litigation, or might be penalties. And most businesses have some element to that, but business can also control that by reducing the amount of data which is high value that they store on behalf of others. The third is around loss of intellectual property, and this just does not apply to some businesses. And so they can actually remove that as an assessment, but some it will apply to. So if they've got intellectual property which is worth high value or which is driving revenue, then a loss of that also creates some sort of long-term loss. And then the last one is really around sufferings from fraud or exploitation of some kind, and that could be insiders or outsiders. And these aren't mutually exclusive, right? Like ransomware is a perfect example where it covers probably 3 of those. It can stop your business from operating. It can actually mean that you got private data which you're holding on behalf of yourself or others that can get released, and also there's a fraud element, an exploitation element to it. But the last one, which kind of is covered across the others, which is you're losing confidence of stakeholders and customers. It rarely sort of happens without one of the others happening. And it really happened in recent weeks with Optus. That wasn't even a cyber incident, was it? They just the outage and the communications that they did or didn't do just created a loss of confidence and reputation. But most cyber risks can actually be drawn back into those top 4 to varying degrees, and then quantified, and using risk management techniques to then determine what's the likelihood of these types of scenarios occurring, and therefore what's the priority of solving this particular problem.
The phrase "how do you need an elephant" comes to mind.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, or is it an elephant you've got, or a fleet of some other type of animal?
Or as long as you got some salt and pepper, it'd be all right. So, well, I guess you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I get what is the risk of getting it wrong, or the cost of getting it wrong? You mentioned fines and penalties, and a little bit around like your reputational damage.
Reputational stop of operations is probably the worst case scenario for most businesses, is if they can't trade. The other risk, which is a much smaller one, which happens much more commonly, is you're really a misdirected spend. So resources are always constrained, and so you've always got to apply those in the place where it has most value, and so you can misdirect spend. And we certainly come across that when we got asked to do a business impact assessment on certain types of cyber risks, or maybe a cyber report that's already been developed. Then is a direction really being applied to those areas of most risk, or is some money just being wasted and could be applied better elsewhere? That's a more hidden cost that isn't massive necessarily, but can build up over a long period of time. And if you're spending money in areas where you don't need to, then it means you could be spending that money in areas which are preventing higher scale risks, right?
Absolutely. And I guess to get a sense of, to quantify it in the minds of the business owner, I put some dollar figures around it, just to sort of, I'm assuming like a business, maybe like, I don't know, $5 million revenue. What would be a fine? What could be one of the worst fines that they could get?
Well, Yeah, the fines. I'm not completely up to date with the Australian Privacy Principle fines, but yeah, and that would be Australian. Of course, if that $5 million business trades overseas, then they get hit with a whole bunch of different jurisdictions, which can be pretty onerous as well. So there's a lot of different variables when it comes to fines. And but if you take a $5 million business and they can't trade, then you divide that $5 million by the number of trading days in the year. That's for ease of calculation. Say there's 200 trading days in the year, and so what is that? 25,000 a day, is it? Is my mathematics right there? And $25,000 a day of revenue at least. We don't know profitability, but if they have a 1 week outage, then depending on the type of business, whether they can make that revenue up or not, then a 1 week outage means they're 125,000 revenue short. So that could be significant, right? That may be.
That's what I'm trying to get a dollar figure out of you, because I think sometimes when people go, this is going to cost you, until they go, oh, that's going to hit my wallet hard, then sometimes it's really hard for them to kind of go, I need to do something about this.
Yeah, correct. I think that is one of the most easiest ways of actually thinking about risk, is go, what's our turnover? What's the impact of being out for a week or even a few days? And let's face it, as you know, Ivan, if you do get hit by ransomware, and God forbid any of your listeners do, hopefully they don't. But they're doing well if they're back on stream within a week, right? And so probably say a month, maybe longer.
I guess it'll go into our next point, but like if they're backed up, or if they, I don't know, like sometimes you find insurance companies won't insure a lot of cybersecurity issues.
Yeah, completely. That's right. And look, even if they insure, then there'll be limits on that insurance, and you won't recover all your losses necessarily. And
or they'll want to see, like, did you have antivirus? Did you have backups? If you didn't have those things, well, we're not liable, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, completely. Exactly. Yeah.
So
insurance companies will have all their
they know all the tricks
to be aware of.
Let's be bureaucratic here. They know the tricks. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I guess knowing what that's going to cost a business owner, and knowing how hard it is to be back on the path of recovery, what's some things that we could do to improve the situation?
Yeah, so business risk, getting an understanding of those risks. So I listed out those 4 risks, which are business risks. Now, some of those will not apply. Not all companies, for instance, will have intellectual property that they've got to secure. So you might be able to just wipe that one out. You might also have minimal data, private data that you hold on behalf of others. So that could be reduced. And so then you can start looking at, okay, what are the likely impacts on my business through different types of scenarios? And what can I tolerate as a business? For some businesses, that $5 million turnover, $125,000 revenue, well, maybe in profitability that might not be that high, and so it's not going to be a massive impact. It could be a very small, low cost business, and so they might be able to tolerate longer outages. Others, it could be a very high profit, and they might have a lot of fixed costs, and so that could be much more threatening to the business as a result of an outage. And so doing those numbers to go, well, what is the impact on our bottom line? Potentially, what's our impact on reputation? Because for instance, some businesses might have contracts with customers where if you are hacked and there is a breach serious enough, you have to report that, and they're able to exit those contracts. And so you might have immediate loss of customers potentially. Others may not. So every business is a little bit different, and everyone will have their risk profile they can assess, and then determine what they're willing to tolerate as a business owner, as an executive team or board, and then start drawing in, okay, what are the different cybersecurity types of controls that we can put in place, and what are their costs? And then you're really matching up. They go, well, okay, what are the downside here implications? What are the things that we can do to try and control those to stop them happening? How much are we therefore willing to invest? And it comes down to some business risk understanding for your organization, being able to make these assessments, and then having conversations around your organization around that, and then bringing in the cyber professionals, of course, into that, and having the cyber professionals can lead this as well, right? So particularly if they have got some business savviness around them. And then having that joint dialogue around, okay, what are those things we are going to do as an organization? What are those things that we agree we don't right now? And then being able to build over time as appropriate.
So I saw in the paper recently that there was that sounds weird to say these days, doesn't it? I saw in the news recently that a change had been made to the privacy policies for small businesses. How do you see that impacting, I guess, yeah. So if you're not aware, businesses up to 3 million previously weren't covered under the Australian privacy principles, but now Australian privacy principles will apply to all businesses, charities, etc. And that's going to affect about 2.5 million additional people as of about mid next year.
Yeah.
So what's your take?
Well, I mean, number one, you just got to accept this stuff, haven't you? I mean, whether you agree or not, I mean, it was put in place to try and make it easier for small businesses to be able to operate, cut down barriers to entry, and reduce red tape requirements. At the same time, private industry, even small private businesses, can have impacts on the community if they have breaches. And so therefore there is a community interest on one side which says, well, let's try and make it easier for small businesses to operate, but on the other side there's an expectation on the way they operate. And with the pervasiveness of cyber threats out there, and the increasing automation means that small businesses can get impacted just as easily as large businesses, because if they're being specifically targeted with very targeted attacks, then they're more likely to go for a cash-rich business. But the nature of the automated attacks that occur and the widespread attacks means that everybody is exposed. So it is becoming, I think, understandable why the privacy principles now apply to those businesses. But at the same time, business people need to learn more, right? There was a time where basic finance wasn't as well known. Everybody understands basic finance now. There was a time, and for some organisations that still are here, where the nature of technology and applying technology into your business wasn't well known. Even basic websites, right? Happily enough, that's changing a lot for most. But then here comes cyber, and cyber is really the next core capability that business owners, even for SMEs, need to be across. It's just becoming an integral part of how you operate a business now. And at the end of the day, that's probably a good thing. It's a sign of the maturity that's necessary, but it will be difficult for some. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of those smaller businesses or people starting out, they're probably going to need a lot more training and education.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that leads us on into when things go right, when it's not all doom and gloom. What are some examples where perhaps to leave us on a positive note, where some cybersecurity advice or processes or systems have gone well?
Yeah, so I mean, we've done a number of business impact assessments, as I've said, mentioned earlier, Avon, where a client might have a very almost technical compliance-based view about all these improvements they've got to make across the whole field of endeavour that they operate in, and they've got their own plans in terms of technology uplift and things that they're trying to do, and then this comes along and reprioritizes everything, and they go, well, how important are some of these things? And so that business impact assessment, I described it earlier, isn't always done, and so we get asked to do that and go, well, what is the business implications of these recommendations? And often we'll find, hey, look, if you're looking at standards, ISO 27000 standard, for instance, then that might be an important tick box to be able to say yes. But even the standard itself allows you to go, well, let's apply this based on business risk. And if we look at the business risk, for instance, one that comes to mind is our, wanting to uplift around identity access management for a particular system, but the system really didn't hold any data of any significance. It was used in the business, but there was no private data in there. If it went down, they could probably survive without it for a couple of weeks without too many problems. Yet the suggestion was they need to put a lot of investment into that to uplift some of its cybersecurity capabilities. And meanwhile, there was other areas, for instance, network segmentation, when they were bringing in some financial transactions, was lower on the priorities, and there were some of the high priority business improvements that they wanted to make to bring about some new services to their customers, and so they were misbalanced. So they were spending money over here for systems that really didn't matter, and they were underspending in an area where they had a major strategic service improvement they were trying to make. And so it's like, well, hang on, let's just have a look at this from a business point of view. And this isn't that important. Let's lower the importance here on that. You probably don't need to invest much here at all. There might be one or two little things you can do, but then that frees up money over here. And also, it speeds the time to resolve that over there, which means it doesn't get in the way of the other transformation agenda they're trying to pursue. So there is a very much a business-orientated way to think about this problem. And that's an important thing for business people and founders and owners and chief executives to think about is, it seems like it's a technical problem, but there's always a way of making it more of a business decision. And so when organizations are doing that, they're taking control, and they're covering the risks that they need to cover, and they're also lowering those risks that aren't really a risk. And they're looking at their business in a much more real, grounded way, which allows them to direct their investment and also direct their team appropriately. So there's plenty of examples out there where organizations are doing it well, and most of them are driving it from that business point of view.
I think, it's good to hear the positive side. Like I mentioned before, that we all we get is doom and gloom. Like this has been hacked, that's been hacked, something else has gone down, and just good to hear that sometimes there is a light at the end of the tunnel or a silver lining. So that makes it a lot more palatable. And thank you for that nice way to finish what is otherwise a very complex topic. So it's been great having you on the show today, and if you're listening, you can check out more from Mark at informpros.com.au. So I got something else on the screen over there. So you've got was there anything else you wanted to share about Inform Pros?
Well, we are a completely independent consultancy there, Avon. So we're not aligned to any products. We don't sell products. We very much sit on the side of our clients, helping them get the most out of technology. So it's an important thing for us. And look, any of your clients want to talk about any of these topics, please reach out. I'd be very happy to talk more.
Fantastic. Well, if you'd like to know more, you can always check out the website, or come and join us at the Relevate community, community.relevate.com.au. And this has been the Business Octopus podcast. Thank you very much for listening. If you'd like to be on the show, check out the website and fill out the contact form. Otherwise, you take care and have a great day.